Hello, my name is Yasmin and welcome to part 2 of my Photomanip Insights tutorial, the walkthrough featuring the two widgets. Today we're going to take a look at the middle part of a manip more or less, and I'm going to show you how I use smart objects, how I finally cut out my images correctly and precisely, how I fix stuff, and how I get the first lighting and color changes into the image. In this part of the tutorial you will see me use a lot of smart objects. To create a smart object you can right click on the layer in the palette and choose Convert to Smart Object, or in the top menu go to Layer, Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. To access a smart object you double click on the layer as I'm showing you right now. When you have access to your smart object, you can change anything inside of it, and by saving, apply the changes to your overall document. I really like to do this for all my major parts, because that way I get the freedom to take a look at the original layer without having all adjustment layers on top, and without having to hide anything when I'm doing this, so I can go in at any time and get fix some stuff. And in this case I can now go in and fix my outlines and really actually cut it properly, so I don't have to do it at the very beginning. So what I do here is I use the pen tool to get the cutting correct, and I only use it for the parts where you later want a really crisp line. If you use it for something else it will look funny, because some things just don't have such clear lines, like hair for example. So you can see that I'm always going around those, and I'm going to use a different method of cutting the hair in a minute. So you can see here that I'm doing two paths because it's two women. I wanted them both on the same mask, so I'm using a vector mask with the paths for the clear cuts, and now I have a layer mask to use for the more soft parts. So I'm going in on the layer mask with black and just painting and brushing away what I don't like. And I have added a layer in the background with a darker color so that I can see better what I'm doing, because in the end the background will be darker, and if I do it on the checkered background that you usually get for transparency, you will not see if you still have white rims in there. So next up, what I'm doing here is I'm going over the hair with a brush and brushing in some more strands, just so it looks more natural. I use a soft brush that reacts to my pen pressure for this. If you're on a mouse, probably it just needs a little more practice. I'm not the best when it comes to painting hair or anything anyway. Here you can see when I press save that it instantly takes on the new form, and I don't need another layer mask on my smart object. I can use it the way it is, and it already has the correct lines, which is going to be really good for lighting later. Now I'm doing the same with the cauldron, just going around and cutting it properly, now that I know that I'm going to keep it. Again, I'm working on the smart object, and when I press save you can see how the ridges disappear now that I have cut it out properly. What I'm also going to do now here is I'm going to adjust the top part of the cauldron, where in the original image there was some dry leaves and stuff in there, so I'm going to overpaint it by using a mask, a vector mask that helps me keep inside the lines more or less. So again, you can see when I press save. Next up, I'm going to correctly mask the fire, and for that I'm going to go over the top part again with the pen tool, so I get a clear and crisp line, and then I'm using another vector mask, and I'm adjusting now the vector mask to get everything in there. This way I have a very clear line at the bottom and get the rest in. So now, because red fire is boring, I'm going to turn it green, and I'm using an adjustment layer for this, and I'm using the selective color here. Just because the red is very dominant, so I can use the red channel, the red color in the drop down, and the whites, neutrals and blacks to get some more definition into the colors. It's easier than using one of the other adjustments. And here I'm using the color balance adjustment to just give it some more kick. You could of course do all of this inside the smart object, but then you would not have a live view of what you're doing. And in this case, because it's so transparent, it's better to see what you're doing. You can always open the smart object later and put in the color adjustment layers if you don't want them in your main file. Next I'm going to fix a little bit of the dress and of the two witches, because there's still also some issues left from the stuff that was in the front. As you can see here, still have to go over the elbow. I'm just overpainting it basically. Now that everything is finally fixed, we can start with the lighting, and here I'm using gradients on a new layer clipped to the witches layer to get some darks in. It's set to multiply, and I'm always picking my colors from the background and from the foreground. Don't use pure white or pure black for highlights and shadows, because it will make your image look flat. Use something ambient, something from the background. So this is what I'm currently doing. I'm going over pretty much everything and trying to fix first more or less the brightness levels, and then also the colors, of course. In that I'm pretty much a creature of habit. I'm going over every layer and clipping in the shadow layers now. So I'm getting everything darker and toned down, and with less contrast and less saturation. And when I'm done with that, I go in and put in some colors that are showing up, because, for example, in this case of the fire, a fire-ish orange glow, and then I'm going in and refining and trying to figure out where the highlights and the shadows and where which color should be going. So at the moment I'm on a soft light layer. The shadows I put in with multiply layers mostly, while for the highlights I use soft light, so I can get the light color a bit better, and also sometimes I use that also for more shadow if I need some more color in the shadows as well. So here you can see I'm going over everything more or less in small doses. So to get really glowy stuff, I like to use color dodge layers, and I'm just painting, and I'm using my layers as bases, and I'm using, other than that, just a lot of brushing and small incremental changes, nothing too big at once. Here I'm going to put in some glow for the fire, for the cauldron itself, and I'm using a normal light layer to get this hazy feeling. I put it on hard light then. Hard light also gives some of this haze. You will have to experiment which blend mode will work best, and sometimes you will need a couple, and sometimes one is enough. As you can see here, you can always go in and experiment with the color and experiment with the sizes. As you can see, I'm experimenting a lot myself, and what I really like to do is to pull up the hue saturation dialog for one of my gradient layers, so I can play with the colors and see live what it does and what it doesn't do when I put it on certain blend modes. So this is always something, if you are unsure, you do not have to fix the color at once. You can just do something now, get the position okay, approximately right, and then play with the opacity of the layer, play with the blend mode, play with the color, and of course you always have to keep in mind where your light source is. So what I'm doing here is using a brush to put in some folds into the dresses, because they look on the original picture like they do not have any folds at all because of the light situation. But here, with the light coming from the cauldron, it would be strange if there weren't any highlights on it, at least a little. So what I do is I use very strong lighting at first and then tone it down. You do not need to get everything correct at once, just the position, and then you can always use the eraser or lower the opacity or take another layer and another blend mode to get what you want. And as she's supposed to be drinking something, of course I'm going to put in some green liquid. So I was trying here how it looks when she's holding it like this, and decided that I didn't like it much, so I went with a little less of the liquid in the glass, and I'm using again a pen tool path to get the lines right, so the liquid doesn't look like it's working against gravity or something. And if you control click on a path, it will give you the selection. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm using the work path, and then I'm using control click to get a selection of it, and then filling the selection, and then playing with the blend mode and trying to fit in what looks right. To get the bubbling sensation from the liquid, I just duplicated the group with the steam, and now I'm using the group layer with a mask to mask out what I do not need, what is behind the hands. And if I now use the group inside the group to transform what is inside, I can get a feeling of how it will look without having to redo my mask every time. Sometimes in the middle of what you're doing, you will find that some other way might be a little better. So as you can see, I decided to go for a path after all, and now I'm putting in some more greenish glow inside the bottle, and also in a minute outside and around the smoke, steam stuff. To get a better feeling of what you're doing, it is a good idea to zoom out once in a while, because you tend to get hung up on some details, and usually you do not even see the details in the finished piece, and the details may also wind up looking kind of funny because you don't have a reference for what it is when you look at it from zoomed out, and it will make your viewers go, what the hell did she do there? So it is good to check once in a while, and it is also good to leave your stuff lying on your hard drive until the next day to see if you can spot something that you didn't spot because you've been staring at it for too long. So this is the end of the second part of this video tutorial concerning the two bitches, and I hope to see you for the next installment. Bye!